An infidelity on some level is a breach of trust. It's a breach of a contract. It's just that most couples don't explicitly establish the contract because monogamy is assumed, because the act itself of questioning it is in itself a questioning of the model until now, and because the discussion is often, I catch you, you're dead. End of discussion. 20 years later, there's an affair. A lot of the people I meet who have had an affair have often had it on the heels of loss. A parent who died, a friend who went too soon, or bad news at the doctor. And when you feel that life is short and mortality is getting close to you, you get that question, is this it? And then sometimes you want to feel alive. You want to have experience that you can beat back death. And affairs are often an antidote to death. I don't look at infidelity as a problem. I look at infidelity often as an existential crisis or experience. I look at it as an expression of the complexities of modern love and monogamy and life and sex and all of that. I look at it as an experience of injury, an attachment injury that often is part of the experience of feeling betrayed, feeling abandoned, feeling lied to, that is there too. I look at it sometimes as the death knell that will finish a marriage that was dying on the vine anyway, or as one of the most powerful alarm systems that a couple can come up with. And it can reinvent a marriage and regenerate a marriage.
There's a very high divorce rate in North America. Does affair have to lead to marital crisis, divorce?
No, it's interesting because part of this work for me started during the Clinton scandal. And one of the things that was very striking, actually to quite a bit of foreigners, was how comfortable America is with divorce and how intolerant it is with infidelity. When America gets very intransigent, even the most liberal ones sometimes, about the subject of infidelity, my first question is, how come you're not so uncomfortable with the subject of divorce? That being said, I think that the criminalization that takes place here sometimes, in terms of calling it a victim and a perpetrator, doesn't really take into account the meaning and the complexities of love, marriage, sex, commitment, loyalty, secrecy, trust, a lot of the subjects that really are part of the topic of infidelity. It's a little reductionistic to kind of polarize it like that, with one person who is the betrayed person and one person who is the unfaithful person. The language itself is very, very telling. And the focus is really on how the perpetrator needs to have remorse, repent, and repair towards the injury that that person caused to the person that is betrayed. It doesn't take into account what preceded, and it has a real moral condemnation to it that is quite pervasive in the society, including in my field, actually.
Now in Europe, you have leaders like the Prime Minister of Italy, Silvio Berlusconi, who's well known for his affairs. Other European dignitaries, they're not crucified by the media like Bill Clinton or Elliot Spitzer. What's the difference?
Because in America, it says if you lie here, by definition, you're going to lie there. So if you've lied to your wife, you will lie to the nation. If your morality is compromised in your marriage, it's impossible that it won't be compromised in your political life. In Europe, the private sphere is separate. It's very new that people would make, major newspaper things about the marriages of the politicians. Even Sarkozy's stories, it's a real borrowed thing coming in from America, actually.
Do you believe that North Americans can learn something from other societies in Europe, Latin America, when it comes to infidelity?
I don't think there's an ideal society, mind you. But I think that Americans don't cheat any less than anyone else. We know by numbers. They just feel more guilty about it. Whereas Europeans are no less idealistic in their desire for a monogamous, long-term, passionate relationship. But they know it can happen. They're not so disillusioned about it. They're not so how would I say, idealistic about it, that if it happens, it's a complete collapse. You know, in America, you could say that the people who divorce are not the disillusioned, they're actually the true idealists. They believe that there is a model, a relationship in which you can find everything. And if you didn't, it's just because you chose the wrong person. Next time you'll do better. You don't question the model, you just say you didn't do a good choice. So the divorcing people are the real idealistic people. They don't question the structure. Whereas the Europeans, in some way, have probably a more mature view that there is no such a relationship and that it is a possibility, that no marriage is shielded from the shadow of the third.
In open marriages, the advocates of open marriages say it takes the in out of infidelity. What do you think of that?
The whole concept of open versus closed doesn't work for me anymore. Because if we are saying open marriage means not sexually exclusive, we can start with that. And then I would say, where does the exclusiveness, the X rather than the in, is what I'm focusing on. Where does the exclusiveness start and stop? And if I look as monogamy as a continuum, then I could say that from the moment you have already had other partners, you are not monogamous. So open starts when? The day you tie the knot? Or it starts before you met? Or, you know, it's much too either or. If people travel alone and go to conferences and go to sales meetings and they interact in sexualized ways with others, is that open? Even though they know that they're doing so? Every couple decides its boundaries. And even an open marriage has boundaries. It says, not in our house, not with somebody I know, not in this country. There is no relationship that can exist without boundaries. The question is, where do you put these boundaries? So I don't see open and closed in this kind of all or nothing. It doesn't help as a distinction. However, I do think that when couples have a sense that this is possibility, because they are sexualized beings, they are traveling in the world, they are still young and vibrant, and maybe they want more than what their relationship can offer, even though it offers them a lot. It does take away the intensity of the secrecy and the lying and the betrayal. But if in that open you go in the place that had been excluded and said that is not okay for us, then you've recreated another betrayal and another breach of trust. If you have 50% of first marriages in America ending in divorce and 65% of second marriages ending in divorce, and the rest of them not always that faithful, you really do wonder in what way is marriage going to evolve. The model of marriage is changing throughout history, all the time. And what's interesting is to look at the model that we have arrived at this moment. Fidelity is not just a marker of loyalty to the primary relationship and the commitment, but fidelity is linked with sexual exclusiveness until gay couples began to separate these two. And they have a fidelity that they see as an emotional commitment, but it doesn't necessarily include a sexual exclusiveness. In heterosexual couples, it has often been completely linked. And monogamy is assumed, whereas today it probably is going to become negotiated.